Hello and welcome. It's just after 5 p.m. in New Delhi, 2:30 in the afternoon in Moscow and 6:30 in the morning in Washington, D.C. And you're watching a special broadcast here on DD India. We're calling it India-Russia Enduring Partnership. We're interrupting our regular programming to bring you a preview of President Vladimir Putin's visit to India. I'm Ramesh Ramachandran and with me is my colleague Gautam Roy.
Thanks, Ramesh. That's right, and we're counting down really to President Putin's much anticipated arrival in Delhi, a visit to India. His plane will be touching down in New Delhi in about 90 odd minutes. So over the next couple of hours, we'll tell you all about what to expect from the visit and why is it important given the prevailing geopolitical circumstances dominated by concerns over conflicts as well as tariffs.
And we'll have our full complement of reporters covering the visit from various locations. We'll also be joined by guests who will put the visit in its proper context for you.
Yes, the world's media has gathered in New Delhi for this summit. Journalists from India, Russia and a number of other nations are also here to cover the Modi-Putin annual summit, the 23rd now.
This is going to be President Putin's first visit to India since 2021. He'll join Prime Minister Modi for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit.
Now, this is aimed at taking the bilateral partnership to a qualitatively new level. Ahead of the visit, security has been tightened across New Delhi. Rabindra Chauhan has more.
Ahead of his high-stake two-day state visit to India, Russian President Vladimir Putin said on Wednesday that Moscow aims to elevate cooperation with India to a qualitatively new level with deeper economic engagement.
We aim to elevate cooperation with the People's Republic of China and the Republic of India to a qualitatively new level by strengthening its technological component. We have numerous joint projects in energy, industry, space, agriculture and other sectors. We will also discuss these topics in detail during the upcoming visit to India with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, including increasing imports of Indian goods to our market.
Cooperation between India and Russia spans various key sectors like defense, trade, energy, nuclear energy, space, science and technology, culture and education. The two-day visit will include bilateral talks and a business forum focused on trade, energy, defense, space and agriculture.
This is the 23rd summit. That means both the sides at every level have invested a great deal of political capital in taking it forward. I still remember that when he had come here in December 2021, at that time, the conflict had not started, but the tensions around Ukraine were going on. And Mr. Putin was on Indian soil for barely 4 hours. But still, he invested that much of time, effort, energy to come, basically to send out a message that this relationship is very important for Russia.
India and Russia share a long-standing trusted partnership elevated to a special and privileged strategic partnership in 2010. This year's summit will review the full range of bilateral cooperation. Defense ties remain an important area in the bilateral relations, with joint R&D and cooperation under Make in India. Both sides also coordinate closely on multilateral forums like the UN, G20, BRICS and SCO. India advocates reform in the SCO, including designating English as an official working language, while SCO regional anti-terrorist structure continues to be crucial in counter-terrorism cooperation. Government-to-government ties remain strong with frequent leader-level meetings and phone calls. Regular ministerial visits reflect sustained momentum in bilateral relations. Putin's visit is being viewed positively across party lines in India, with opposition leaders also welcoming it with optimism. Congress leader Shashi Tharoor said the visit is extremely important.
We talked for a long time about strategic autonomy. We have to preserve our negotiating space. For us, we cannot mortgage our autonomy to any other country's interests. We have to have independent relationships with all these countries. And Russia is an old relationship, it's a serious relationship, it's a strong relationship, and one where obviously we have very many fundamental interests at stake. So I think we will have to see this relationship, how it moves after this visit, but it's a very important visit for our country.
The enthusiasm of President Putin's visit to India is also visible on the artistic landscape. An artist in New Delhi has prepared a portrait of President Putin alongside images of India's present and past prime ministers, symbolic of a strong and enduring friendship between the two countries. Ahead of the high-profile visit, security agencies are on high alert with an extensive security grid deployed across the national capital, covering all routes and engagements. Bureau Report, DD India.
The Kremlin spokesperson says trade would figure high on the agenda of the 23rd India-Russia Annual Summit. My colleague Akhilesh Suman has more from New Delhi.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Tuesday said that during his upcoming visit to India, Russian President Vladimir Putin will discuss both bilateral and international issues with Prime Minister Narendra Modi.
India for us is a great partner, and we do hope that the visit of President Putin will be successful. As successful was the visit of Prime Minister Modi 1 year ago to Moscow. President and Prime Minister had a very, very good possibility to spend lots of hours together discussing the most sensitive issues of the global and regional agenda. We hope that this will be the case for New Delhi meeting the day after tomorrow.
Addressing a virtual press conference organized by Sputnik News, Peskov said there's vast potential for cooperation between India and Russia, ranging from small nuclear reactors and military equipment to various goods and services. Peskov reiterated that sanctions imposed on Russia by the US and the EU are illegal, as they have not been authorized by the United Nations. Peskov also said that Putin will also share a first-hand assessment of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine conflict and the efforts to resolve it.
We do appreciate the position and the stand of India vis-à-vis Ukrainian settlement and Ukrainian affair. We do appreciate the readiness of New Delhi to contribute to a search of peaceful solution in this very complicated conflict. And we do respect the position of Prime Minister Modi, and we do respect the possibility of exchanging information from the first hands between himself and our president, and we hope that this practice will continue.
Business leaders from both the countries will meet in Delhi to explore deeper business-to-business partnerships which could help narrow the trade imbalance which currently favors Russia. Akhilesh Suman's report, DD India. Let's now give you a sense of how Delhi has been primed to receive the Russian president this time around for the 23rd India-Russia Annual Bilateral Summit. We're joined by DD India's Tapas Bhattacharya from outside Parliament Technical Area in the national capital. Good evening to you, Tapas. Just tell us what kind of measures have been put in place, not just in terms of security, but the ground laying as well for this visit, because it just seems that this time around there's a lot that has been built up into it, an unusually high amount of anticipation.
There is no doubt about that, Gautam, that there's definitely, there's a lot of excitement in the air. Let me just, put it in that way. Multi-layered security arrangements have been put in place. We have, different, security agencies manning different areas that needs to be done. We will not get into the detail of that, but one thing is for sure that the kind of security arrangement that has been put in place is equivalent to that is given to any head of the state, or for that matter, more than that. Right now I'm outside the Parliament Technical Area, and we can say that it's already been decked up, it's already been spruced up to welcome President Putin. So we will be expecting in a short while from now, approximately 80 minutes from now, President Putin's flight to land here. Inside, our team is already positioned. I am right now outside the particular technical area, and we expect that in a short while from now, President Putin will come out. He's expected to come with a large entourage of ministers, senior officials of their own respective central bank, and we believe that it is not just going to be a symbolic, but it's going to be a geopolitical shift visit that will define India and Russian relationship, which has been growing strong, and in the last decade or so, it has found a new place in the heart of geopolitics. Gautam.
Right, Tapas, do stay on. We're also joined by another of our colleagues, Shubhendu Ghosh. Shubhendu, what can you tell us about the itinerary of the Russian president upon his arrival in New Delhi? We are told that he'll become the first foreign visitor to, visit the Sevar Teeth after it's been renamed, the official residence of the Prime Minister of India.
Absolutely, Ramesh. Let me tell you, I'm reporting from the India Gate. Opposite me is the Rashtrapati Bhavan, where a ceremonial welcome will be accorded to the visiting leader, Russian President Vladimir Putin, tomorrow. This evening, a short while from now, Russian President, his flight would be reaching New Delhi. He would be having a meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Tomorrow is the big day for India-Russia ties. The India-Russia annual summit is set to take place. There are also important interventions in the domain of trade and defense. These meetings have already started. We saw just a short while ago defense ministers from both the countries paid their respects at the War Memorial, and they're now at Manekshaw Center for closer engagement. When the two leaders meet, Prime Minister Modi and Russian President Putin, defense and trade ties would be a unique focus. If I can also tell you a little about this venue, India Gate, usually we have this Kartavya Path flanked by the Indian flag on both sides, but today, tomorrow are important days. Along with the Indian flag, tricolor, you also have the Russian flag flying high alongside. So in that sense, important couple of days for India-Russia ties, the manner in which this special strategic privilege relationship is going to be taken forward.
Yes, certainly. Tapas, if you're still with us, just tell us a little bit more, because where Shubhendu is standing remind me of the fact that every year on Republic Day, India's Republic Day, we see a lot of armaments also being displayed, and a lot of them have been through the decades of Russian origin. And that remains a focus, despite the fact that India is trying to become more and more self-reliant as far as defense is concerned. And how has that altered the defense ties between India and Russia?
Quite valid. You put up a very important point, Gautam. Let me put it this way, that even now, even with the European countries, even with France, even with other countries chipping in with their own defense production, defense equipment, Russia still possesses more than 60 to 70% of India's military hardware, if I have to use the term. And that's something that you have to deal with. You have to understand that Russia and India relationship go way beyond this relationship, this particular visit. It has a history. It has a bonhomie that has not been seen in any relationship for that matter. It's a relationship where both countries have grown stronger with each day. Just put it into perspective. India's main battle tank T-90, it's of Russian origin. Its still main parts, its production happens still in India, but its main parts, the spare parts, still comes from Russia. In Operation Sindoor, we saw how BrahMos created panic in opposition and Pakistan airspace. It is a classic example of India and Russia collaboration. And that's something that everybody is talking about. S-400, which proved to be a game changer, while many people calling it, the heart of India's air defense, again of Russian origin. We believe that in this particular visit, we will have more such legacy armament and defense deals that will be inked in this particular visit. We were told by sources and as well as media reports that are coming in that almost approximately 10 intergovernmental deal can happen, and there will be 15 commercial deals on the table. So we will have to wait and watch whether these deals do materialize or how many actually do materialize. But one thing is for sure that both the countries have gone from strength to strength, and we were also getting some reports that in this particular visit, India might just be getting a nuclear attacking submarine, which will help in providing it the nuclear triad that we've been talking about. Triad is where you have air force using the nuclear deterrent. Then you have the ground level nuclear arsenal, and at the same time the launchers that we talk about, and then you have the submarine, which is what you call the second strike capability. So if India goes ahead and gets this particular nuclear submarine, attacking submarine, which we're getting some reports, it will provide India with a major logistic in the Indian subcontinent as well as in the Indian Ocean region.
Right, Tapas and Shubhendu, do stay on. We are joined now by our guests who will take the discussion forward. Joining us is Ambassador Mohan Kumar, a former Indian ambassador to France and Bahrain. Joining us from Moscow is senior journalist Fred Ware. Also with us shortly would be Ambassador Manjeev Puri, former Indian ambassador to the European Union and Nepal. Gentlemen, welcome to this broadcast. To you first, Mr. Ware, your thoughts on the optics and likely outcomes from the much anticipated visit of the Russian president to India.
This, of course, is occurring amid a great deal of geopolitical turmoil.
Right.
And Putin is coming to try to refocus or recalibrate what is a very reliable, traditional, old relationship and move it forward, because I think he is seeing now that the war in Ukraine is coming to its end game. It might be sooner or later, but certainly in the next few months, well, either through Russian battlefield momentum or the peace deal, which is in the course of being worked out. It's a very optimistic scenario in terms of these U.S.-Russian talks over Ukraine. So Putin is thinking of later, after the war, the shape of the world order, Russia's place in it. And one of the things the Russians have concluded is that their relations with Europe are finished. I mean, they might be cordial, but all the trade, all the hopes that they had invested in economic integration with Europe are done. And therefore, Russia is seriously looking for long-term not necessarily new relationships, but new level of relationships, which will become central to its geopolitical strategy going forward. So I think that's a background to this visit that's very important. Putin is looking forward. And I think he's bringing a lot of proposals for business cooperation, for a new deal in Russian immigration law for Indian workers and business investors who want to come here to Russia. That's in addition to the oil and the arms and the big ticket things that will be dominating the headlines. There's a whole number of other issues that he will want to put into a new footing between India and Russia.
Right. Let me bring in Ambassador Mohan Kumar on this as well. We've heard from Mr. Ware as to what would be President Putin's perspective as far as this visit is concerned. What would be Prime Minister Modi's? Because of late we've seen how things with America have turned a bit sour, with tariffs, punitive tariffs really being imposed on India, doubled really, because we were buying Russian oil, more and more of Russian oil because of the discounts. And that has had an impact as well on the kind of ties that we want to further develop with Russia, especially where energy is concerned. Now we're talking more in terms of the nuclear domain as well.
So thank you, Gautam. I think it's important to see this relationship on its own merit, rather than try and see the relationship through the prism of American lens or European lens. So that's the first point I'd like to make. The second point I'd like to make is that geopolitically, it comes at a very fraught time for the world, when actually what you're saying is there are three great powers on the horizon and a bunch of other powers. Among the three great powers, I would put US, China for sure. A lot of people would think of Russia as economically not so significant as to qualify for a great power, but I would disagree with that characterization. I think Russia qualifies as a great power. From India's perspective, if you are to put in place your policy of multi-alignment, then I think you have to engage with all great powers, utilize all the cards at your disposal, and try to see if you can play the long game. I find it extremely interesting that our Russian co-panelist has talked of President Putin looking beyond the conflict in Ukraine and deciding that Europe is no longer a priority area, but India and perhaps China and other countries will be priority areas. For India, I think it is a question of trying to see if this relationship can be moved away from just being defense-centric. So far, it's been a defense-centric relationship. We would like to do more in the area of defense, especially R&D, co-production and co-development of technology. But I think it's important, in order to provide a ballast to the relationship, that we have extremely good commercial, economic, trade and technology ties. And that is something that I hope this visit will address. It's been a unidimensional relationship. It's been focused not exclusively but primarily on defense. So I'm trying to see whether this visit will succeed in broad basing the relationship, including things like trade, investment, technology, and even people-to-people ties. There has been some talk of mobility partnership agreement between Russia and India, and as anti-immigration sentiment rises in the West, Indian youth will have to be found alternative venues, and one such area or one such country could be Russia. And that is something that I'm very keen to see, if it's possible to provide this kind of a broad basis and a broad foundation for this legacy special relationship that we have between Russia and India.
Before we bring in our reporters back in the discussion, Mr. Wade, if I can come back to you quickly for your comment, since Ambassador Kumar referred to the so-called G2 comprising the US and China, how does Russia view this, the genesis of this new G2, as it were, comprising the US and China? Would Russia be comfortable with the idea of seeing the two countries in a closer embrace going forward as well?
That China and the United States are the preeminent powers, superpowers in the world, economically especially. But I think Russia would beg to disagree. And I do too. I don't think we're going back to a bifurcated Cold War type of world. We're going forward to a multipolar one, or polycentric, as some say, in which Russia is obviously one of the big players, India as well, both nuclear armed countries, Russia having a legacy Soviet arsenal, which is the biggest nuclear arsenal on Earth that can never be forgotten. So no, I think the Russians see themselves definitely as a great power, and part of the reason that Putin is negotiating so earnestly with Donald Trump right now is not so much to settle the war in Ukraine, although that's really important goal, but to restore Russian relations with the United States, to create a new, not necessarily a compact, but levels of cooperation and the old, like developed during the Cold War, where they sit down at the table and talk as equals. This is something that the Russians want very much, and Donald Trump is dangling that before them.
Right. Fred Bia, I'm told that this is the amount of time that you have with us, so I'd like to thank you at this point of time and take a quick break on this special show as well. we were still tracking the developments related to the two-day state visit of Russian President Vladimir Putin. He's set to arrive in the national capital in little less than an hour from now, and we'll get you the latest on that as well. Keep watching this special broadcast.
The heart of India, a land filled with surprises. In the mighty force of your waters, you hold the deepest secrets that take us back in time. When it's said that the gods walk this land, this is where we feel the warmth of your faces. See hands that mold life. While embracing change, you grow. In you is the land that gives, creates, nurtures, grows, and builds. It's all in you. Come, experience Chhattisgarh.
Always welcoming. The vibe of Punjab is larger than life.
Welcome back. You're watching a special broadcast here on DD India on the much anticipated visit to India by Russia's President Vladimir Putin. Now, India and Russia share a 78-year legacy of stable, time-tested partnership. The bond between Prime Minister Modi and President Putin reflects the depth of their strategic partnership, strengthened further through annual summits and the 2+2 dialogue.
Yes, their regular high-level engagement continues to drive cooperation across political, defense, economic and technological domains. In our next report, Mohammad Absarul Ahsan delves into various aspects of India-Russia ties.
Russia has been a long-standing and time-tested partner for India. Under the strategic partnership, several institutionalized dialogue mechanisms operate at both political and official levels to ensure regular interaction and follow-up on cooperation activities. The bilateral relationship has remained strong and stable over the past 78 years. In December 2021, a new dimension to the bilateral cooperation was added with the first 2+2 dialogue. Meetings of foreign and defense ministers of both countries started taking place alongside the summit-level talks between Prime Minister Modi and President of Russia, Vladimir Putin. So far, 22 annual summits have taken place alternatively in India and Russia. The last summit was held on July 8 and 9, 2024 in Moscow, and President Putin is set to visit India for the 23rd summit in New Delhi. Bilateral trade between India and Russia reached a record high of $68.7 billion in FY 2024-25. India's exports to Russia, $4.9 billion. India's imports from Russia, $63.8 billion. Major items of export from India include pharmaceuticals, organic and inorganic chemicals, iron and steel, and marine products. Major items of import from Russia include oil and petroleum products, vegetable oil, particularly sunflower oil, fertilizers, coking coal, precious stones, and metals. The primary mechanism at the government level for enhancing trade and economic cooperation is the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission for Trade, Economic, Scientific, and Cultural Cooperation. Intensifying the trade and economic relations has been identified as a priority area by both the leaders, who had set the targets of increasing bilateral investment to $50 billion by 2025 and bilateral trade to $100 billion by 2030. India has long-standing and wide-ranging cooperation with Russia in the field of defense. India-Russia military technical cooperation has evolved from a buyer-seller framework to one involving joint research, development and production of advanced defense technologies and systems. RM and Russian Defense Minister co-chaired the India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission on Military and Military Technical Cooperation. INS Turshil was commissioned into Indian Navy in the presence of RM at the Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad on 9th of December 2024. On 28 March to 2nd of April 2025, the bilateral naval exercise Indra 2025 between Indian and Russian navies was conducted in two phases: Harbour phase at Chennai and Sea phase in Bay of Bengal. Science and technology has played a key role in the bilateral India-Russia partnership, especially in the early days after India's independence. India and Russia work together on basic sciences, materials science, mathematics, and cutting-edge areas like India's manned spaceflight program Gaganyaan, nanotechnologies, etc. India's only nuclear power plant established with another country is in Kundankulam in Tamil Nadu, which is established in collaboration with Russia. The bilateral cooperation is guided by the new roadmap for science, technology and innovation signed during the 21st Annual Summit in New Delhi in December 2021. In 2024, Prime Minister Modi was conferred upon Russia's highest state decoration, the Order of St. Andrew the Apostle, the first called, for Prime Minister's outstanding contribution to India-Russia ties. Apart from arms and trade, cultural ties from Russia's love for Indian movies to scholarship programs and tourism have helped the two nations to maintain strong relations despite ups and downs. Around 63,000 people of Indian origin live in Russia. Mohammad Absarul Hassan reports for DT India.
And RT's Rory Shushe has more from New Delhi.
Russian President Vladimir Putin coming here to the beautiful capital city of India to meet his dear friend, Prime Minister Narendra Modi. It spans across the entire spectrum, whether it's the economy, whether it's the military, whether it's agriculture, whether it's entirely wrapped up into the whole picture of bilateral trade, because the numbers are enormous. Right now, we are looking at an annual bilateral trade right now of hitting roughly $70 billion. That is an enormous number, and yet Moscow and New Delhi are expecting that bilateral trade number to reach $100 billion in the near future. We're discussing the joint production of the BrahMos missile system, joint collaborative production between Russia and India to make it domestically produced here in this country. The BrahMos missile. They're also talking about more bilateral trade with the T-90 Russian tanks, AK assault rifles as well. The numbers, the investments keep going up and up and up. Now, Russia and India standing very much on the front part of the main stage today of this new multipolar world order. Russia and India are a driving force in this new polycentric world order. And currently, Russia and India are investigating a new type of payment system that will help them to essentially avoid Western sanctions. They're discussing this Russian payment system that should come into effect soon so that Russia and India can avoid potential Western sanctions. So with Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi here in the beautiful, beautiful capital city of India, our expectations and our hopes are very, very high for some major agreements to be signed. And with the driving force of Russia and India working together, with the likes of the BRICS family as well, which is frankly right now the biggest strategic partnership in the world. So here we are, I'm Rory Shushe for RT International to cover the 23rd Annual Russia-India Summit. Expectations are very high, and we're looking forward to telling you more.
So a lot of enthusiasm there developing as far as India and Russia are concerned with this visit set to start in under an hour from now, when Russian President Vladimir Putin will land in Delhi. We're also joined now by Professor Gulshan Sachdeva, School of International Studies at the Jawaharlal Nehru University in Delhi. We already have Ambassador Mohan Kumar with us, also my colleague Shubhendu Ghosh. Let me bring in Shubhendu now. Shubhendu, clearly the kind of expectations that have been built around this visit, it tells us that not only will the existing levels of cooperation that are taking place between India and Russia in different spheres, will that be enhanced, but perhaps more dimensions might be added.
Absolutely, Gautam. There is no doubt about how India-Russia ties are time-tested. But what is unique are the certain geopolitical pressures around which this meeting between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin is going to take place. The relationship is at an inflection point. How the two leaders are going to steer this relationship, present a roadmap for the future, would be very interesting to look at. A point that Ambassador Mohan Kumar earlier mentioned, there's a lot of excitement, anticipation around a possible migration agreement between, inter-migration agreement between India and Russia. We know that both India and Russia have a unique demographic situation. In Russia in particular, similar to what we saw in Japan over the past few years. It's a shrinking, aging population. About upwards of 140 million people reside in Russia. They will look to partner with countries with skilled workforce. India, with its demographic advantage, with one of the world's largest STEM educated population, provides a perfect partnership to steer this relationship in the future. So in that sense, for the youth, for the coming generations of the two countries to partner together, a lot may be decided in the manner in which that will happen in this edition. And we're looking at ties between India and Russia. Gautam, it will be interesting for our Russian friends to also know that there would be, while the focus is on, hard topics like economics and defense, there are as many admirers of Leo Tolstoy and Alexander Pushkin here in India as they are in Russia. In fact, in the national capital, there are roads named after Leo Tolstoy. There is a Alexander Pushkin statue very close to where you are, near Mandi House Circle. Talks volumes about the civilizational links, literary, academic and people-to-people links, which are sure to be enhanced in this visit of President Putin to India.
Professor Sachdev, coming to you now, all indications are that the focus, the prime focus of this summit will most likely be on trade and economy. Now, if that is indeed true, besides, of course, the other, perennial issues of defense and security, oil and gas, energy partnership, space and nuclear energy, the focus this time will most likely be on the economy. And if that is so, how do you think both sides will be able to make progress on, for instance, on bridging the trade deficit to begin with, number one. Number two, to boost India's exports to Russia in order to make the balance of trade more favorable to India.
Well, thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Well, I think you are right. One thing which has really changed direction of India-Russia relation in the last 3-4 years is our trade. You see, as you were discussing, there is a legacy of very close political ties, strategic ties from the Soviet times. And we were working very closely with Russia when we signed a strategic partnership in 2000, the last 25 years. But one must not forget that one important pillar of India-Soviet relationship was also very special trade and economic relationship between India and Soviet Union then. In fact, in 1991, when Soviet Union disintegrated, it was India's #1 trading partner. Now that pillar of India-Soviet relationship was very badly damaged during 90s, and we continue to talk about this in all summit meetings. Various targets were set, but we know that for many years the trade between India and Russia was between 8 to 10 billion trade. Suddenly, interestingly, in the last 3-4 years, since the Ukraine war has begun, because Europe decided to move away from Russia, and Russia continued to be a major producer and exporter of energy products. So Indian companies have started buying crude oil, and at one point of time it was close to 40% of our crude imports. And as a result of this, now you have close to 70 billion trade, and 100 billion figures can be easily touched. But this is a dynamic situation. Means there is one is we have been buying this because there was certain discount was given to Indian companies. A very significant amount of this crude oil was also processed in India and was also exported to Europe and other markets. Now, because you have sanctions 25% from the United States because India is buying oil. Similarly, the European Union from January have decided not to buy petroleum products from those countries which are processing Russian crude, and it means the Russian crude which is processed crude will not be That's what they have decided. So there's a dynamic situation in the sense that Indian companies will now have to look for some other markets if they are planning to process it and sell it further. Then there is also, since we also have very delicate relation at this stage, Indo-US trade agreement. So there is certain pressure from the US, but this is also a litmus test for India's strategic autonomy, that, how do we really navigate this? And this has also given a new, I would say, direction to India-Russia relations, because many of the transport corridors which we were talking for years, International North-South Trade Corridor, Vladivostok, Chennai corridor and others, I mean, there was political will, everything is fine, but the trade volumes were not there. Now we have trade volumes, but there are certain pressure to reduce these volumes. But this is what I think, I mean, many of those things will not perhaps be discussed in open because of the sensitive nature of the issue. And there is also major problem, because if we have 70 billion trade at the moment and largely basically energy imports, there is also issue of transactions. How do you really make payments of this? Because Russia is under sanctions, they are cut off from SWIFT, but it's very clear now that in the last 3 years, policymakers from both the countries have worked out certain mechanism that which satisfy both of them. That's why, in fact, we are not talking about very small trade, we are talking about huge amount of transactions, and which are happening obviously not through the international normal channels. They are happening through different currency, perhaps some Indian currency or some other BRICS currencies. So there is a certain mechanism, and some of the companies, particularly the private companies, those who have been trading, they are also a bit cautious, because they also have exposure in EU and also in the American markets. So they also would be working out their own scenarios. How do we really continue with this? But I'm quite sure that the way I think things have worked out in the last 3 years, there could be some disruptions one can think of in the next coming weeks or months, but a certain new direction to Indo-Russian relations have been set. And how do you really build on this? There is, of course, issue of trade deficit, but I think that's relatively, I would say, not such a major issue, because you are buying basically energy. So from wherever you will buy energy, there would be certain deficit issue. But there is also major opportunity for Indian companies, because you can see a lot of products from China, from Turkey and other countries are entering Russian market, because it's a still reasonably big market, and they are looking for many consumer products, and many of the Indian companies could produce, because there is relatively less competition, I would say, in many of those products. But still, that information, that mechanism, and some of the Indian companies are still cautious in working, or dealing with Russia, because they are hoping that once that sanctions are over, only then they will try to enter this market. So it's a very, I would say, very interesting situation at the moment. But the thing which we were talking for many years, how do we really revive India-Russia trade and economic linkages? There is a possibility, and because there is a trade volume which is huge now at the moment, they're also seriously started talking about India-Eurasian, Eurasian Economic Union trade, particularly kind of trade
FTA as well.
Yeah. Yes. And that will cover, of course, the major market is Russia, but also Kazakhstan and other major markets as well.
Certainly.
So there are many things which need to happen, but you may not really hear much perhaps about this, rather than broad statements. But I think this will be one of the very serious issues which will be discussed during the discussion.
Yes, Ambassador Mohan Kumar, balancing trade and keeping the levels of trade that have been achieved going are two very clear challenges in the environment that this relationship finds itself in, primarily owing to the US President. And how can these two leaders work things out to ensure that does not get in the way, or that does not diminish the levels of trade really which have been achieved so far?
So, one aspect that we are seeing in world trade is that there is broad weaponization of trade. And this is by several powers, not just one or two. Given this, countries are engaging in what I call multiple strategic hedging. You don't want to put all your trade eggs in one basket. I mean, we now have an issue with the United States, and we have an FTA negotiations with EU. Hopefully that will come through. But I think it's important for India to have alternatives. For example, the 50% tariff on shrimps and textiles, garments, effectively shuts off the US market, frankly. And we need to find alternative markets, which is what the Commerce Minister has been talking about for the last 3 months. So one thing that India could do is to look at Russian markets so that our exports don't suffer as a result of the 50% tariff. The 50% tariff will not be forever, but I think we have learned important lessons in the last 1 or 2 years when there has been a weaponization of trade. That's the first. The second point I want to make is that with Russia, I think there is also a need to look at investment and technology. So can Indian enterprises invest in Russia so that we can make for the Russian market right there? So that is something that President Putin has been saying. He would welcome Indian enterprises and Indian investors with open arms. Now that is something that India must look at carefully. The last, as I said, was mobility partnership agreement that could happen between the two countries. Russia, as you know, is depopulating very fast. In many areas of Russia, they don't have enough people. And Indians, as you know, are hardy and they can actually settle in just about any place. But it requires a mindset change in Russia. Russians have to be more welcoming of immigration. I don't know about that. So the last point I would say is that trade, investment, and even migration can only be facilitated by the governments, Gautam. You know, governments cannot direct Indian enterprises to sell a certain amount of goods to Russia, a certain amount of goods to United States, and a certain amount of goods to Europe. It doesn't work like that anymore. So what governments can do, what leaders like Putin and Modi can do, is to create an enabling framework so that our entrepreneurs and our economic ecosystem understands that Russia is a lucrative market. I think the most important point I want to make is that if we are to practice multi-alignment, then you have to engage with all powers, utilize all your cards, and play the long game. We have to start thinking of interaction with Russia post-Ukraine phase. The Ukraine conflict will not continue forever. Maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, but as somebody said, we have reached the end game. We have to look past that. And if we look past that, I think the India-Russia relationship enters a new era. And what I see the visit doing is to lay the foundations of a new India-Russia strategic partnership in which we don't just focus on a defense-centric relationship, but also look at trade, investment, technology, immigration, not just cultural ties. You know, a couple of Russian ballet groups coming here, a couple of Bharatanatyam dancers going to Russia. I'm not belittling those, they're important, but we've been having that. What you want to see is TCS go to Russia and establish an office there. Try to do things in the IT sphere. Try to see if we can do things in AI. Try to do things in the cutting edge of technology where I think India and Russia can actually cooperate to mutual advantage. That is, I think, what we should be looking at. So essentially trying to lay the basis for a future India-Russia strategic partnership.
Professor, coming to you now, I mean, Ambassador Kumar referred to and spoke about how Russia should be more welcoming of Indian immigrants. But in the same breath, do you think Russia is also equally welcoming of Indian investors in particular? I mean, how can both countries insulate their trade from geopolitical tensions that we see around us? And also another important issue of protection of Indian investments in Russia. How safe and secure will they be going forward?
Well, I think these are serious issues, but I think I agree with Ambassador Mohan Kumar that there is a solid basis and things are going to change. I mean, it may take some time, but then we have to really now lay a new foundation for the kind of things which we really need to do with each other. We know that historically, during Soviet period, Soviets played a very important role in India's initial industrialization and modernization. So now we have to really find where they can help us in India's modernization ambitions. Similarly, now India has its own capacities in many areas, including digital public infrastructure and IT sector, and so many other areas. So that Russia is also looking for, again, because they were quite fascinated for some time, towards Europe, or that I think that fascination is gone. So now they really want to, integrate their economy, future economy, with the global South, and they call it interestingly, they obviously don't belong to the global South, so they call it global majority. So they are looking towards global majority. They obviously have very strong linkages at this point of time with China. They are also having close partnership with India and other countries. So this is the area in which they are really looking. But yes, it's the private sector to take advantage. But the kind of situation, at least likely to be, at least for the next foreseeable, at least if one is looking 2, 3, 4 years, the governments need to play a very important role, because any kind of transaction...
Exactly. If I can come in on that, you refer to the private sector. How does India and Russia incentivize Indian investors, private sector investments, to go and invest in Russia? Because there is an inertia, there is an inbuilt inertia against investing in Russia, given the situation obtaining there. So what can either Russia or India or both of them do together to incentivize Indian investments in Russia going forward?
Well, certain kind of, I would say, assurances, certain kind of underwritten has to be done, certain kind of fund has to be created to have the initial push. The Russians have enough, I would say, resources, because they also, we are also paying some of our imports, particularly in Indian currency also, but obviously they also need more resources, like the kind of things were happening at this point of time in Russia. But we also must not forget that Russia is also, they have cutting edge technologies in certain areas, not just only in the defense and the energy sector, in the infrastructure sector, in the quantums, and even in cyber security and many of those areas, I think, and in the past also, our institutions, our universities, our research labs, the government to government kind of linkages in the science and technology, they have been quite robust. But how do we really translate this into the private sector linkages? This is what exactly the problem has been for many, many years between India and Russia. Earlier, somehow our economies moved away from each other, because we were looking also towards West, they were also looking towards West. But only the defense sector and to some extent energy sector. In the energy sector, we still had made a huge investment in the Russian economy in the last 15, 20 years, still continue to look into this sector. And defense ties, of course, are still, despite our diversification, likely to be very significant and important. But how do we really look into some of the other areas? These are still, I think we really need to do a lot of work. Particularly, there's a possibility of our medium industries. Even if some of the big industries, they may be shy because they have exposure to other big market, but some of the medium scale industries, they would be perhaps more willing to take some more risk. So how do we really, government can create certain kind of investment? And Russia, of course, would be very welcoming any kind of investment happening. In fact, there is a different new production system which has actually started the last 3-4 years in Russia, because in fact many of, despite having capacities, Russians stopped producing many of the consumer products, many other things, because there was enough resources. They were just buying either from China or from the European producers. But now things have changed, and even the defense production is actually 2-3 times more than what it used to be. So the movement actually things are a bit stable in the next few months. One can really see a big push. And the visa issue used to be a major issue between India and Russia, but the visa is pretty liberal now. Thousands and thousands of Indian workers are already working. And Ambassador Mohan Kumar mentioned about mobility agreement. This is going to be, I think, one of the major deliverables of this visit. And already thousands of Indians are working in Russia now in all kind of sectors, because they do need a lot of skilled, semi-skilled, high-skilled labor force. And India is one country, because there also used to be a lot of other mobility from Central Asian countries, from Kazakhstan, particularly from Uzbekistan, Tajikistan and other areas. In the last 3-4 years, actually some of them, they have moved to their own countries, and many others are not coming from different other parts. But so that one area where India and Russia can really do that very well, and Russians are welcoming. It's not like the situation is not like what you have in other parts of the world, that there is a kind of a consensus about more Indian migration happening in Russia, and they would need not just only immediately but for the long term. And that will be real people-to-people kind of linkages with Russia. In fact, even when the Soviet Union broke up, when other companies came out, this was only the Indian students and others, those who were actually there. They are the one who continue to do business in the new Russia. So in fact, when you have thousands of Indians going there working, I think automatically many of those linkages and business opportunities will come.
Certainly, there's a lot of room for possibility, but the question always hinges on to what extent would all these changes that both India and Russia perhaps want to usher in would still depend on ending the war, because the moment you start engaging with Russia, that sort of an engagement will come under the gaze of the Americans. Their sanctions, Sauron's eye sees everything kind of a situation, and then it becomes very, very unpredictable for all players really. So we'll look at that going further on as well. But for the moment, thank you so much for joining us, Ambassador Mohan Kumar. I'm told that your time with us was till this juncture, so thank you for joining in. Now, if we tell you about the expectations, but what's happening is that according to the Indian government, and sources have been telling us here that there are some expected outcomes from President Putin's visit to India. Now, it's expected that the visit will go a long way in strengthening economic cooperation. President Putin is traveling with a large group of business persons. India expects to improve the trade deficit with Russia, I beg your pardon.
And multiple avenues being worked out to increase Indian exports to Russia as well. Exports in the field of pharmaceuticals, automobiles, agricultural products are also in the pipeline, and we expect some forward movement going forward on this as well. The idea is to bridge the balance of trade, reduce the trade deficit that's today against India, and to boost Indian exports to Russia in the days ahead, especially as I mentioned in pharmaceuticals, agriculture, automobiles, including marine products. And Indian businesses and products will get a bigger market, and this will also boost job creation and well-being of the Indian farmers.
Now, multiple agreements and MOUs are obviously expected in the fields of shipping, healthcare, fertilizers, connectivity. More cooperation in people-to-people relations, particularly in terms of mobility, partnerships of skilled, even semi-skilled personnel from India to Russia. This is also something that is very much on the cards, and a movement is expected on all these fronts.
Right, time for a very short break. Don't go anywhere. More on the other side. Keep watching DD India.